Merci de nous avoir rejoints. Aujourd'hui, nous allons traiter les passés composés. So today we are going to be looking at the passé composé. The passé composé is a French tense used for the past. It is expressed using either of the two auxiliary verbs in French. So the two auxiliary verbs here are être, the verb to be, and avoir, the verb to have. So to express passé composé, you are to use the auxiliary verb, that is either être or avoir, plus the participe passé or the past participle. So we're going to handle the verb être. First of all, as I said earlier, for you to express passé composé, you use either être or avoir, but then there are rules guiding this. So starting with être, if you look to the right, you see a list of verbs. These verbs in particular are to be conjugated using être as the auxiliary. Dr. and Mrs. Van de Trump. This is a popular acronym used to memorize these verbs. To express passé composé with these verbs, you first conjugate the verb être, as I did here. For example, je suis, tu es, / elle. Depending on who is carrying out the verb, you conjugate accordingly. Now, the adjoining verb to be expressed in past tense is then conjugated in its participe passé form, or in other words, its past participle form. So, using arriver as an example, so this is the past participle form of the verb arriver, that is to arrive. This is the past participle form. So, one other thing, I left out something very important. The past participle form of verbs to be conjugated using être, they agree in gender and in number with the subject in the sentence. That is the person carrying out the action, carrying out the verb. So they agree in gender, they agree in number. For instance, in arriver, this is the past participle form. It has a masculine version, it has a feminine version. It also has a masculine plural version and a feminine plural version. So arriver, if it is a masculine subject carrying out the verb, it will be arriver with just one E with accent aigu. If it was a feminine or a female subject, it will be arriver with an extra E. If it was more than one masculine character, it will be the normal arriver with the accent aigu plus an S. As for the feminine plural, you would add an extra E plus an S. Let us proceed. So here are some examples. So look at this. Je suis arrivé hier. I came back yesterday. So let's assume that I'm the one talking. I'm masculine. So I'll use the arrivé, the masculine singular form with just one E. See, we've conjugated être first. First of all, you conjugate être and then the participe passé form of arrivé, which is arrivé with the accent aigu. So example number 2, réveiller, that is to wake up. Now for the second example, so we have aller, the verb to go. So look at this. Nous sommes allés au cinéma hier. We went to the cinema yesterday. The participe passé form of aller has to agree in gender and in number. So in this case, we have nous, we. So the subject is more than one. Because of this, the participe passé form will reflect this plurality with the addition of S, showing that there is more than one subject in the sentence, and also it will agree in gender. So we're going to assume that we here are like we are a group of boys, so we are masculine. Therefore, the usage of aller. If this was feminine, there will be an extra E after E with the accent aigu, something like this. So I think you get the drift now. Let us proceed. Now, another rule. So reflexive verbs are equally conjugated with être. Apart from the Mr. and Mrs. Van de Trump list of verbs, reflexive verbs are inclusive. They are inclusive of the verbs that can be conjugated using être. Alright? So what are reflexive verbs? Carries out on itself. Reflexive verbs are verbs carried out by the subject on itself. Call them boomerang verbs because the action reverts back to the subject of the verb. Like, for example, look at this first sentence. We are using appeler to make a sentence. Appeler, the verb to call. So, il s'appelait Tarek. He was called Tarek. He was called Tarek. Who was called? Tarek. So this verb appeler reverts back to il. But let's not comment too much on what a reflexive verb is. Let's look at être, the operation of être in this instance. Because due to the fact that appeler is reflexive, as evidenced by the use of so. So this S apostrophe is something we call a reflexive pronoun. They are characterized by these, reflexive verbs are characterized by these pronouns. So we have me, we have te, we have se, then we have nous, then vous, else, then so. So this is for je, this is for tu, this is for il/elle, this is for nous, this is for vous, this is for us. Verbs that employ these pronouns at the right, that is me, te, se, nous, vous, so, are considered reflexive pronouns. Alright? Once you have to use these reflexive pronouns in a sentence and you're trying to talk about past events, then you're going to use the verb être to conjugate the relevant verbs. We've talked about s'appeler. Il s'appelait Tarek. He was called Tarek. Appeler, reflexive verb, as you can see here. So se has to come before the être being conjugated. Let's see the second example. Laver. Laver means to wash. So let's see. Elles se sont lavées avant le dîner. They wash themselves before dinner. Alright. Elles se sont lavées. They wash themselves. Alright. Okay, you can see the reflexive verb element. The verb laver is being carried out on the subject. The verb boomerangs back to the subject, which is elle, plural feminine. Also, you can see the reflexive pronoun coming before the être conjugation here. Alright, so that one aside, être is also used in the cases of reflexive verbs. Now, something interesting here. Laver. Laver has an extra E and an S because of the feminine nature of the subject. If it was masculine, we would have just this S without this extra unaccented O. That is masculine plural. This is feminine plural, masculine plural. So you get the drift. The verb, the participle passé form must agree with the subject in the sentence. That's all. So in the next slide, we are going to be looking at avoir and its own rules for conjugation. Now, when we talk about avoir is used to express the passé composé of every other verb. So let's see some examples. So, manger, to eat. J'ai mangé hier. I ate yesterday. Manger is not part of the Mr. and Mrs. Van der Trap list of verbs, so it falls under avoir. So the rule is quite similar with that of être. In fact, it's the same thing, just that you change être. You swap être for avoir. But then the participle passé remains the same. The difference here is that the difference with avoir is that the participle passé form, the past participle, does not agree with the subject of the sentence. It remains the same. I prefer past participle verbs in avoir because I don't have to fuss about whether the subject is a female or a masculine or the number of the subject. The past participle form remains the same. It does not change. Although there are exceptions, we'll be looking at the exceptions in the next class. But as of now, keep in mind that the participle passé does not change. As we will see in the other examples, nobody has to agree with the subject in this case. Now let's see the second example. Oublier, to forget. J'ai oublié mon téléphone. I forgot my phone. Oublié. This is the participe passé form with the accented O. It remains like this forever, whether the subject is feminine, masculine, or there are 1,000 in number. Oublié remains oublié with just one accent aigu. Now, for voyager, the same thing. Nous avons voyagé le 6 septembre. We traveled on 6 September. Nous avons voyagé. This is more than one person. The subject is more than one because we are talking about we, more than one. But as you can see here, voyager doesn't take an extra S because the rule of the participe passé in avoir conjugation is that the participe passé remains the same. No need to think about gender. You just write it the way it is with an accented E. Casser, to break. Vous avez cassé nos espoirs. You broke our hopes. So nobody cares if vous here is masculine or feminine. Casser remains the same. Just conjugate your avoir and attach the participe passé form of casser. Étudier. Elles ont étudié la littérature française pendant des heures. They studied French literature for hours. Well, French literature is interesting. Il est très intéressant. Elle, more than one girl. But the participe passé form doesn't care. It remains unchanged. So you get the point. To summarize, to make conjugations in Passé Composé, you conjugate the auxiliary verb, that is either être or avoir, and then you attach the participe passé form of the verb to be conjugated. When we talk about être, the verb to be conjugated has to agree in gender and number with the subject of the sentence. Whereas for avoir, the participe passé forms don't care, they don't give a hoot, they remain unchanged. So that's that. In être, add an extra E when we are dealing with feminine. If it's feminine plural, you add an extra E plus an S. If it's just masculine, you just add an S. With avoir, we don't do that. You just add your accented E and be on your way. So that's that for now. So see you in the next class. In the next class, we are going to be looking at the rules of agreement, because in all honesty, it's more nuanced than I made it seem in this class. So see you in the next class.